Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Allie with amariespeaks.com. Welcome back. If you have seen previous videos, this is another shadow work video. I believe I left off talking about common pitfalls that happen within shadow work and also about these kind of deceptive loops that we trap ourselves in around and in with the shadow and external shadow as well. And I talked a bit about the 3D matrix and that shadow work and aspects of that. So if that kind of stuff intrigues you, definitely go check out my previous video if you haven't seen it. I will link it below for anybody who's interested in taking a look at that. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I've done quite a few videos on shadow work already, and I wrote a ton of blogs on it too, and on light work as well. So if you're interested in the topic, so cool. It is one of my favorite topics to talk about, and I also have Comprehending Consciousness series where I just did a real quick tour of the iceberg, kind of initial welcome to shadow work topic for really new people who are just waking up. So if that's you and you're totally new to shadow work, I would really suggest just going and watching that video, which I will link in the description below as like the first video to watch. Because here, I'm not really going to get into the whole thing about shadow work. I made this video specifically, or I want to make this video specifically for a couple of things that I put in my notebook here, specifically. The last video I remember I had said I would possibly make a video and try to talk about things like pain that come with the shadow and with shadow work, and that I'd make sort of like I talked about the major players of the shadow, right? Like our characteristic players of ourselves, and mirrored in the collective as well. So things like the ego, the inner child, your inner mother. So this is more of how shadow work presents itself within yourself, or the shadow more particularly. So yeah, I'm not going to get too much into exactly the generalities and the beginners thing. So if that's where your level is at, you might be slightly confused by what I'm talking about here, or not. I don't know. I don't want to discourage anybody from listening either. So, but to get on point here, this video is going to be about the common symptoms, I guess is what I'm going to call them, of shadow work, or too much shadow work, right? How, when you're working with the cycle to learn how to be an alchemist, right, and to move your energy and your work, into different shades of light, excuse me, there are these exit signs like coming up, like your exit's coming up, these little triggers, these little warnings that, your gas tank, your energetic gas tank is getting low, say, when you're on the shadow work side of it. And if you don't know about that, or if you ignore them, or you just don't know how to manage them well, right, they become problematic. And that's why I've chose to kind of describe them as symptoms of too much shadow work. Because just like pain or disease, or are uncomfortable, they are warnings, or the presence making itself known of deeper problems, right? Or a change is needed, or healing, is needed. Balance is trying to be called in, right? when we see extreme symptoms being reflected. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this video specifically. I kind of want to jump into where I left off at that common pitfalls video. And so I hope that I won't deter anybody or confuse anybody here by not really going into depth. But anyways, it is what it is, right? So when we are doing a lot of shadow work, it can be it depends on the levels of your working, right? And so mostly I'm going to try to just talk at an intermediate sort of level to where most people generally are, you know. Not complete beginner, but, you know, not getting to alchemy either, you know, like having struggles, like identifying things and having a lot of practice in a lot of areas being needed and learned and new, right? It's a curious adventure type of attitude across many categories that we are approaching, and it's really helpful if you want to hold a positive resonance, that you can always remind yourself of that and always try as much as you can to pull back to the observer role and remember the bigger picture. That's really how you can, first and foremost, most people, no matter where on the spectrum of spirituality and love and self-love and positivity that you lie, most people, even if their spectrum is much smaller, they can tap into the observer role, the big picture, right? The eagle's eye view of things. And to me, I found, and just see with the people that I've happened to talk to and things, that tends to be a good neutral ground to starting to talk about and understand unconditional love and acceptance. Now, when we talk about too much shadow and too much shadow work, it's clear, right, that that's kind of forgotten or brushed under the rug, or it's been put in a corner somewhere, that remembrance, because, ow, little table. Yes, because inside you have to be super focused in the shadow, right? It's hard to see and it's dark, and you have to really pay attention to where you're shining your light and your focus and attention of energy into shadowed things to really work and define and try to see them, right? And again, that gets into kind of like the what is shadow work, and if you really haven't done it and you don't understand what I'm saying, definitely go check out further videos later. Because you could be lost in your own shadow and you don't realize. And so many, and so many of us are in so many ways. I don't want to act like I'm not that person or I was never or anything like that, because the shadow is very sly and clever, and each of our own shadows are, you know, mirrored versions of ourselves, acting opposite to our benefit in our most intelligent and cognitive, you know, to our own full cognitive capability, I guess what I'm trying to say, that your shadow for yourself is no stupider than you are. You know, you are an intelligent being. You have infinite intelligence at your fingertips, inside your fingertips, might I add, as well, right, that we can work with, that you can impact and relate to and have conversations with and work through, and allow source to work through, right? Because it should be a co-creation of life happening here. And this is also tied to that big picture observer view, because who's the observer? What does that even mean? Well, I mean, clearly it means that there's an ultimate purpose of some kind, you know, put together, that is being overseen for some reason. And then it's like, okay, we don't need to get into anything further than that. Everybody wants to add like all the straws to the camel's back at that point. That right there is it. Should be common ground, neutrality. Everyone could accept that. And, you know, that's a beautiful mystery. And you're free to your own definition within the mystery. That's the working in the beauty of individuality of this place of creation, right? We're each creator beings, but we each start from that space and place. And we should be respected as sovereign beings as such. And yeah, and that gets into sovereignty. And if that's a new concept to you, or that sounds wonderful, and that sparks awesome curiosity, like what is sovereignty? Oh, I love that idea of everyone is equal and like golden grace just to be here, experiencing this place, right? I have tons of videos on sovereignty, and I've wrote blogs about it, and lots of people are talking about it. You know, it's I did a comprehending consciousness thing on it as well because it's such a pop word right now, sovereignty, but it is not frivolous. It is not like just glitter and sparkle and meaningless. It is deep-rooted, honest, organic truth. And that's why it glitters. That's why it's so beautiful, you know. But of course, it has a super shallow version of it if you so seek to choose that top mainstream version. You know, you have to dive deep for yourself in order to find these things, right? Anyways, I don't want to get sidetracked into consciousness talking. That this type of understanding, though, and rooting back into these things, sovereignty, unconditional love, right? Gratitude for just being here, you know, the great mystery of it, a connection to God if that's your thing, or source or the universe, you know. Those are all very common light work things. And so when we're doing a lot of shadow work, we're trapped in the shadow, or maybe we don't even realize or understand what shadow work was, and we're just feeling very negative, right? Calling in those remembrances and feeling them and allowing them and remembering they're just as valid and easily felt and created in your world as these negative ones that are really you're choosing to be totally bogged down by. And unfortunately, like another big stepping stone here when we have too much shadow is the responsibility of the shadow in itself, right? Being able to take responsibility for all those things that are negative and that you've allowed to collect and malignantly probably, you know, like just seep out into areas in your life or maybe in your body vessel even, and maybe you're sick or you're chronically ill or you have a lot of stress or you know, breathing problems, or you're making unhealthy choices in your life, or you have negative relationships, or, you know, you don't like yourself, or whatever it might be. Those are all symptoms of too much shadow, or too much shadow work. And basically, that is source, or light, or love, trying to, like, remind you to balance out, because things are a cycle. Your light work and your shadow are a cycle. You're good and you're bad, quote unquote, right? Because it's not really that, but whatever. It's a cycling. It's a working, right? We learn through contrast, and sometimes when we have a lot of negativity, whether it's we're doing a lot of heavy work on past trauma, like that type of shadow work, or we're actively going into, you know, hard parts within ourselves to work on them. Or maybe it's external shadows with, you know, you're diving in, researching into conspiracy theories or looking for the truth in that aspect. And I don't mean truth as in to say that conspiracy theories are all fake or whatever, but there's so many slippery slopes of those conspiracy theory holes, the rabbit holes, that you can end up doing. It doesn't feel always like kind of like shadow work, or it doesn't feel like you're, you know, getting bogged down when you're doing that kind of thing because you think you're searching for the truth, like you think that you're fueled by light. But it's very easy to get too far down, and then you get tricked up, and you take on too many shadows, and then you don't realize, like, oh, how am I going to get back out? Or how I'm not really pulling light so clearly down anymore because, you know, I'm in this labyrinth of rabbit holes with, like, reflected and distorted light, right? Lies, things that are not quite true. That's a time to remember, okay, we need to pull out. And some people don't have that capacity, right? But hopefully more people will identify and realize and know that in order to ever really fuel and find any sort of real truth, you have to have that place and space, connection to source and to the before or the great one truth, organic light, original light. Other types of too much shadow where you don't realize it is like a lot of negativity, self-negativity, self-negative talk, or critiquing of others, not feeling good enough, feeling really a real need to compete and compare with others. And that can be, across all types of layering, whether it's in your family setting at home with like siblings or your parents, or whether that is like at work with colleagues or your boss or whatever, or school. It can be so many different ways. So I just want to look at my notes here to make sure that I'm like not going too off topic to where I wanted to get to. Because I have a tendency to write my notes as one thing, and then I start to talk and it's not even too close to what I wrote, and I'm like, oh, I missed these topics that I wrote down, of course. Okay, so yeah, I want to just go over briefly the bullet points that I have here, which I did put down, which I'm calling, the symptoms of too much shadow work or too much negativity. Excuse me. So I use these as reminders to myself that an exit is coming, or rest is coming, or I need to really get ready to close my shadow workings, right? And revoke service to the shadow for now, and really close the work if I'm doing something, I'm doing real personal healing with myself, these ones are a good trigger for me too when I'm doing a lot of external kind of research, or allowing, the circus show of the 3D matrix that's playing out, and I've been like watching that theater for way too long, kind of out there absorbing that kind of stuff, These things, when I see them popping up in my life a lot, I know, okay, it's time. The cycles, the tide is changing, right? It's kind of like that feeling, that knowing, that source or spirit or my higher self, whatever you want to see it as, is giving me that little nudge that's like, enough for now. Slow down. Okay, it's time to rest. It's time to pull in. It's an internal, intuitive time, And there is nothing wrong with that. In learning your cycles and understanding them, and learning how to read your gas tank, and functioning within your energetic, emotional, spiritual, and physical body, like to what actually feels positive and good to you, and being okay with also, needing rest and needing support, or, needing guidance sometimes, seeking assistance once in a while, that is fine too. Coming to a place of that is, I believe, what the shadow work, the contrast, the duality, our energetic alchemy practice here, as being these energetic creators is like all about. And as I said at the beginning, I think I said it in this video, this is why this is like shadow work is one of the topics I love to talk about so much, because I do a lot of it, and I find so many intricate nuances and new insights, and I just love to share them and hope to inspire others, and hope others share theirs as well, because it's very important at this time, obviously. You can see like the whole shadow work template right now happening. They're really, on a whole for the collective, it's time. Excuse me. My throat is so dry. This morning. You can see the collective needing to call in more light right now as well, and you can see the tides are attempting to change, and really bring in positive and bring in some balance to this really off-centered, really heavily negatively oriented thing that's happening in the 3D matrix, in the last however long. Anyways, so the symptoms, right? These are things now that, like I said, when I feel them popping up in my life, I know that I need to pull back. I know it's time to not dive in more and assess these things and find out where they're coming from and start doing work on them. No, it's time to accept them for what they are, pull back and slow down, and get ready for closure and change. Right? So, first thing is what I already talked about, which is pain. And that can be emotional or physical, which kind of are the same in itself anyways, right? But it's pain that has a negative point of view, a negative charge centered around it. Right? There's multitude of different kind of pain, and I talked about that, like how we can sit through pain and how pain is a guiding thing, and it can really be a great teacher. And I know from great experience, but this is the type or the feeling that it's overwhelming negativity, right? It's not the kind that you feel, okay, courageous to stand against. It's not an obstacle that you feel empowered by. This is, when it's overwhelming pain, or a point of view or perspective that it is, right? Or that, it's remaining and you've been doing work on it, but it's still there, it's not really taking your offer, right? You're saying, hey, I want to help you out. I want to offer service. I'm trying to give you light. I love you. What do you need? How could you feel better? What's a solution for you? And it's just like not even changing, or it's like changing slowly, but in a more negative way. And you just know, like, all these things you're doing, it's like, no, I don't like that. No, no, no. That type of pain that's fine. You cannot do this kind of work all at once. Like I say this analogy so many times. So if you see my other videos, you're probably so sick of it. But right, like we have a super dirty house, like a hoarder's house. You don't expect to get it clean in one day. And shadow work in our vessels, especially depending on our lives and the amount of trauma you've been through, the kind of negativity you hold, whatever that is. Your house is dirtier or more compact and more stuffed full of who knows what, right? You don't go through your cabinets and pull every item out from every single room and put it all together in a lump and then think you're going to alphabetize everything and get it all done one day. It does not work like that. And having expectations like that is just unreal. And it's really distorted and feeding more shadows, feeding more negativity. And if you can't understand that yet, that's something to look at a little further. I'm not going to go too much into that video. I don't want to get caught up on a sidetrack about that. But that's definitely, just understand that that's a really foundational understanding. So I hope you could get that. We could just do piece by piece, room by room, cabinet by cabinet. It's much more simple. And so when we're having overwhelming pain or pain that won't change, or, it's clear that that shadowed portion is hurting and not ready to accept offering to heal, that should be okay. Us as working with light and working with unconditional love, we're not trying to force healing on anything or change, So that's okay, but know that when it's feeling overwhelming, or when you're feeling like you've exhausted your angles to approach something at, right? Don't feel belittled. Don't feel like, oh, I got to find more. So I should know more things to do. No, just understand right there and then. Okay, relax, stop, and slow down. And maybe perhaps it's time to revoke service, right? This is what I'm saying. We're approaching a change of tides. So that's when you have to think about with the shadow, okay, maybe it's ready to say, I'll be back later for you. Love you. Namaste. Didn't make the choice right now, but I'm going to, uphold my boundaries. Sorry, the lawn people are here. I hope it's not too distracting. I'm upholding my boundaries, and I'm going to do some light work now for myself because it feels wonderful, and I've depleted my energy offering service to you here, as much as I'm willing to do for now. So I will be back for you later. Source is here unconditionally, always for you, whether I'm here or not. So hey, if you want to change, talk to Source in the meantime. And if not, I will return for you if you would like me to, right? Would you like me to? That's the conversation we have at the end of shadow work, right? Just in case people I don't want to leave too like cliffhanger without being clear about where I'm trying to put the direction of conversation when we're talking about, okay, overwhelming pain or something, because I don't want, some people can feel very trapped in these symptoms, like they have no way out of them. And I don't want to leave the door like way confusing. I want to be very direct. It's very clear. Like, you need love and light. You need to love yourself and call in positivity, whether it's a pet, whether it's something you love to do, whether it's your mother or your grandmother or, a child or something, anything that is particularly to you, something that you feel great always around and you feel unconditionally loved and great with, go to that. Always. Because you know what? It's a cycle, remember. So another thing, right, is that when we're in shadow work or you're just stuck in a negative state, right, another thing you might notice that pops up in your life, right, are these other symptoms bubbling up that I notice when I might not notice in the workings of the shadow work, in myself and in my energy body. I might not really feel that I'm gathering super negative charge, but I will start to notice in my life, like I'm easily inflamed, irritated, or like overreaching kind of into my children's lives, into my husband's lives or whatever, like kind of like micromanaging or critiquing too much, or like, triggered by things, or like looking for kind of like poking at things, right? And that's really not me. I'm more of like a laid back kind of person, and I like to let things be as they are and accept people for what they are and like have a good vibe and and be positive and stuff. So when I start to be like, oh, I'm noticing myself like really with that verbal kind of like whip of a mouth, I'm like, that's when I try to catch myself and be like, ooh, how much shadow work have I been doing? Have I been on the internet a lot, like seeking kind of negativity? Have I been writing a lot about more negative things, or, like in my mind? And then I use that as a cue to myself to like check on what kind of work I'm doing and see if this is time that I need to change the entire cycle, or is it something more where I just need to do something quickly for myself to feel good, or put some good music on or whatever. Call in a quick little burst of light, There's different workings between shadow and light work for everyone, Another thing that I might notice is, feeling fatigue, numbness, apathy, loss of vitality, an empty feeling, loss of motivation or interest, If I start to feel like that, I'm like, oh, okay, wow, I've expended, my curiosity and my desires, and then I know, okay, it's definitely time to do some resting. I tend to look at, okay, have I been offering a lot of service to people? Have I been comforting people a lot? Have I been out like physically in my direct world working with people, giving my love and attention to others a lot? Or maybe somebody's been sick a lot. A lot of times I personally will feel kind of like that loss of vitality or loss of motivation and interest after I've been doing things like that. But it comes for other reasons as well, and it might be different for you. I'm just giving an example, working examples. Oh yeah, another thing I tend to notice is like the little upsets in physical catalysts in my direct world are way more common. Like slips and falls, drops, missing items, lost things, bumps, accidents, And I really feel like this is the external forces attempting you to, really get yourself to slow down, to stop, to center yourself, right? Take it slow, to be in your present moment and fully in your conscious awareness for each present moment, right? I thought this video was going to be short. Now it's a half an hour. I'm almost at the end of my list. Right? And sometimes I notice too, with a lot of external shadow work, and I'm going to make a different video about this. I'm getting into this in my negative agendas kind of tricks and traps video segments that I've been doing over on BitChute. Oh, if you're watching this on YouTube, I haven't been putting them on YouTube. They're a BitChute only thing, but I'll link them here if you're interested in them. I've been talking about the negative agendas traps over there. But this is really, I think, kind of, if I do a lot of seeking of external negative shadows and attempts of, collective shadow workings and understanding that whole show out there, I notice if I don't keep up my real light work and my real boundaries and protection like very strong and centered all the time, when it slips, these disruptions, the accidents in real life, the direct influences of problems in my life erupt, and it's very direct and it's very obvious. And I'll be like, oh, I forgot, this morning I didn't do my boundary setting to full extent. I kind of skimped out. I just did maybe half an hour of whatever, my yoga and meditation regular, instead of actually spending work to cleanse and clear all of my energetic boundaries and set protections and ask for prayers and guidance. Usually that's an extended portion that I do maybe a couple times a week, not after every morning kind of thing I do in my morning time with my breath work and meditation, yoga and stuff like that. I don't always have time to do extended prayer and whole boundary settings and do some Palo Santo, or maybe do my singing bowl and things, set it up nice, because I have a family life and I homeschool my kids and stuff, and every day I don't have exact time for that. But anyways, I've noticed, if I skimp out on that continuously for 2 days maybe, or a day, 2 days, I'll notice something an eruption of some kind of accident, mistake, in the external world especially. But however, when things are, normally when we're doing regular shadow work and when we're energetically working and with our light and shadow cycles here, it can just be, not external world influence things like that. It can be your own kind of things like I talked about before, missing and lost items, or losing your train of thought and stuff like that, The shadow works in mysterious ways, and when you are collecting negativity around you, it is an alignment and orientation along with this electric charge in the ether, right, and in your toroidal space around you, and in your heart center and everything. So when you have a greater negative charge going on, not only is your shadow more comfortable to kind of push boundaries and wiggle around and change itself and explore manyness in different ways, right? You are a beacon, an energetic sending pulsations out, to the ether, and you're resonating more negative out there. So you're calling in and letting the more negative externals also know, hey, I'm here, I'm fertile ground, So that, and this is another thing. So this is another bullet point that I'm getting into here. When we have this overall, kind of negative charge, it can also cause these kind of more 3D direct world shadows, drama, or exes coming up in your life, or friendship issues, or social problems, close friends or relatives. You might have an argument with them, or at your boss or your job, or maybe you hit an obstacle, or maybe, you get in trouble at work or something, Your finances could hit some kind of unexpected obstacle, right? Some kind of hiccup. Because like I'm saying, where your attention goes, your energy flows, right? And we are beacons of creative energy. We're like fluxing in the ether, right? Popping up these energetic possibilities in our little river path through the current, through the ether, like where you're expecting to go, you will, kind of thing. It's and so yeah, when you're facing those things, that's a real push to be like, hey, from the light, from love and source, to be like, we're over here. Like, you don't have to feel like that. You don't have to be stuck doing that. You don't have to call all that crap to you. Remember. And then also here at the end, like, I want to just talk about the most extreme cases, of course, and like being trapped in the shadow when you don't realize it, or having people in your life who you see who are trapped in the shadow, who don't realize they are, who don't understand, they don't have that conscious awareness yet to even kind of grasp the concepts, right? They're very closed off, probably in their heart especially. It can be almost in self-preservation for these people. And it's a really hard place to be at, you know, whether it's in yourself and it's just a hard spot of your shadow that's like this, or it's your whole being is, or maybe you have a family member, you know, or someone you love, a friend, or who is stuck like this, you know. It's almost like an unconscious loop that you get stuck in, and you are basically cut off from your direct one truth of love and worth and just a beingness to be here, sovereignty, like I was talking about at the very beginning, right? They are basically totally forgetting or brushing under the rug, you know, or putting in a corner, just like I said at the start of this video, that remembering that they are worth it, that they are a purposeful being and an entity that they have segmented off, you know, from the rest. And then we ask them, like, why? What are your boundaries for? What do you represent? You know, and let them know that it's okay for them to represent whatever it is that they are feeling called to move within it and discover it to the fullness that it needs to be. But that they should always be seeking a solution that feels good, that feels right. You know, why blockade off love, gratitude, acceptance of others, you know, that is detrimental to your ultimate survival. A lot of these people, and even the shadow and the darkness, they get very wrapped up in the survival aspect, like being able to stay alive as long as possible, or harness as much energy, or hold as much and keep as big as possible for as long as possible. And that in itself is, you know, a shadowed mechanism of control. We all deal with it, and it's multi-layered and faceted and ever-changing, right? But loosening it as much as you can, you know, laughing at it, accepting it for what it is really how you create a better experience, and how you allow light to come in, and how you can really help those hurtful traumas and shadows and heal and actually move forward, you know. And also, you know, if it is like external shadows, or it is, you know, things that you could just shut off and move on from, being able to take the observer's view and being able to understand like your own cycles and your worthiness of your light and sovereignty, you can sometimes just say no thank you to that whole shadowed aspect, or that shadow external thing that's trying to infringe upon you. You can just be like, no, I do not consent to that. That's not part of my world, not part of my reality. And your light will protect you. You know, it is the strongest thing in this entire in your entire reality, you know. And remembering that is, like I said, the ultimate goal. We have to remember, no matter where, how negative, how dark it seems, no matter how deep and bad the shadows get, that there's always what now. There's always that I'm still here moment, right? Shadows just create manyness more, and what we're seeking is clarity and clearance. And, you know, it's duality at work again. It's a paradox in the working, right? And that in itself is the great mystery. And I'm just going to circle back to where I started at the beginning, into the understanding the great mystery and the leveling, right? And if we could just have a common ground of leveling and understanding that, yes, duality exists, light and shadow exist, evil and good exist, it's not about one overpowering the other and taking over and shining through, or one taking over and banishing the other and darkening forever. That could never happen and won't ever happen. But it's about seeking harmonious workings in between the two. It is about appreciating and understanding the exploration and the growth and the possibilities, and then it's not about having to explore, just like that gentle no thank you, just like a positive, beautiful boundary of, individuality that we are given with our body vessels, right? We have these organically set boundaries that divide us into things, into categories, into our own personal spaces. If we lived in a world of respect of those things and sovereignty, then our entire systems and the reflections of the workings would be totally different, right? We'd have more service to others-oriented beings who are living positive, seeking positive solutions and harmonious balances, and the negativity wouldn't be allowed and wouldn't be encouraged to overpower so much. You have to understand and appreciate catalysts, disruptions, the working, the obstacles, the shadows, the distortions to an extent, right? Because they add detail. They flourish the painting. They're a beautiful tile. When you pull back and see the picture, of the stained glass window, right? That shadow in the corner of the room had to be there, because when you pull out, the picture's a beautiful room, and of course there's shadows in the room. Okay, so yeah, I feel like I've talked on so much here, and I wanted this to be a quick video just about the symptoms here. So I hope I have touched on everything here at the end. I just want to clarify that if you didn't see any of my previous videos, I hope you'll check them out. If shadow work is totally new to you, please take it slow. Don't jump right in. Don't go and try to rearrange your whole house in one day. Start with something low-hanging fruits. Do little daily practices. Call in more positivity. And please, if you feel negative overwhelm, it is more than okay to step back and hold positive boundaries. Respect your light, your worthiness, your sovereignty, right? Do things that feel good for yourself. And connect with those others who, light you up inside too. The darkness will always be there. Don't worry. Your shadow will be there waiting. Don't worry to go back to it later, and don't worry about it now. Let it go for now. It's perfectly fine. Let go of the control. That's just the lasso of the shadow trying to not get you to leave, because it's desiring you to be there. It's, the shadow needs us to be there. So when we're trying to revoke service and pull out, of course it's trying to tell you, fool you into believing, control these lassos. So just do things that feel good for yourself for a little while. Laugh it off. Let it know, darkness has a right to be there, and you chose not to take my service when it was offered. So I'm going to go do things that feel great for myself right now. And when I feel like I can offer you service again, I'll be back for you. Right? So I hope it's been enlightening, and I definitely will link below those negative agenda videos that are over on BitChute in case you see this on YouTube and you're interested in checking those out. And next I'm going to do a video episode 20 for Comprehending Consciousness about mind control. So if that sparks your interest, you can find my next video shortly on that. I hope you'll tune in. In the meantime, always you could find me on amariespeaks.com. Free tips and tools, references over there on all types of things, introspection, spirituality, and happiness. Or if you use Telegram, I'm over there on Marie Speaks as well. So I'll catch you next time. Thank you again so much for joining me. I hope you have a beautiful day or evening wherever in the world you are. I hope you join me next time.